How's it going, everybody? And welcome to Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford. My name is Blake Holmes, and I'm here with my co-host Isaiah Addair. Stick around with us. We're going to be talking about the recent action around March Madness, the National Basketball Association, and Major League Baseball. But first, ladies and gentlemen, the NCAA men's basketball season has finally come to an end. It came in a rather, honestly, not so as exciting as we were maybe hoping for a note. Starting with the Final Four, because a lot I know, kind of like a lot of people, my bracket was in shambles, was shattered in the early rounds of this tournament. And in the Final Four, we had Loyola Chicago, the Cinderella, taking on the Michigan Wolverines, and the Villanova Wildcats taking on the Kansas Jayhawks. If I'm not mistaken, Isaiah, we both had a Loyola Chicago Villanova championship when we picked last week. Sadly, neither of us were right. Obviously, Michigan took down Loyola State pretty handily by 12 points. The Ramblers' dream came to an end, but really, it's not necessarily about the loss here. It's more so about the journey they made in this impressive run. So, Isaiah, what do you have to say? What is this loss? I know, should we focus more on the loss or maybe more on the upsets and the journey here than anything?
I would go the journey there because even though we had, Loyola Chicago, like you said, making it to the championship, I don't think anybody in the right mind, I would say, wouldn't really have them as favorites over Villanova. So, I would just focus on the way they got there, the upsets, the incredible run, the furthest they've made it since 1963 when they won the championship. Just focus on the journey because there's only going to be one champion. And yeah, a lot of the time it's championship or bust, but honestly, it was a good run either way. So, congratulations on the run.
Well, like I've said before, this is the highest. They were trying to become the highest seed to ever make an NCAA champion. The NCAA championship, the highest seed to ever do that is an 8 seed, and to go from an 8 to an 11. That's a jump that maybe we've seen a lot of firsts in this postseason. This may not have been a first that the NCAA was ready to see. It could happen in the future, but we shouldn't, completely ignore that Michigan was a very good basketball team. The Wolverines were well coached. They got hot at the right time. That's the important thing. Momentum. People don't realize how much momentum plays into the game of basketball because a team could be down by, let's say, 16 points with 10 minutes to go. But guess what? That one shot falls or that one monstrous dunk happens and you're on a roll. And from there, it's bucket among buckets. You end up getting stops. You piece a few stops together and just like that, it's an 8-point game. Then it's a 4-point game. And all of that is a byproduct of momentum. Michigan found a way to, they didn't have that great of the beginning of the season. They sneak and they get into the Big Ten championship, and they win. They run through the tournament. You get to the NCAA tournament in the first round. You run your way through the NCAA tournament. Close games, nail biters. But as I said before, I said last week, they're very battle tested. So was Loyola Chicago. But to look at it and see the journey they had, they got hot at the right time, and that's really what propelled them and allowed them to get to the point that they were now. I really thought that Michigan. I'll be honest. I had them losing to Houston in the round of 32. They proved to me they were a championship caliber team, and true teams, true contenders, do that to your naysayers. And I gotta say, I was wrong about that. Like I said, I thought Houston was trying to become the team in this tournament that Michigan ended up being. So, congrats to the Wolverines for making it to the championship game. And Loyola Chicago, it's a heck of a run. There's nothing that they should ever be ashamed of for that. You go to the NCAA tournament, you're told you're probably going to lose in the first round as an 11 seed. Granted, 11 seeds and 6 seeds, there have been a lot of upsets there, but to make it past not only a 6 seed, a 3 seed, to go all the way to the Final Four as an 11, something that's only been done, I believe, 3 other times in NCAA history. It's almost unprecedented, so it's still a heck of a run that Loyola Chicago should always be proud of.
Not to mention that the Loyola Chicago was actually winning by 7 at halftime against Michigan. So, obviously Michigan was able to get a momentum swing. Like you said, things just start falling. They won by 8. But Loyola was still winning by 7 at halftime.
Loyola Chicago actually lost by 12.
They lost by 12? Mm-hmm. Oh, my bad. I thought it was 8. But yeah.
On the other side of the bracket, representing the East and the Midwest, the Villanova Wildcats took care of business against the Jayhawks, and a result, honestly, I kind of expected. Villanova was playing better basketball than anybody, really, in this NCAA tournament. And I said that being battle tested, I've said the word battle tested way too many times in this show, but in the main point, the point of being battle tested means that you know how to win a close game. But there's no need to be battle tested if you're beating each team by 15, by double figures. And that's exactly what Nova did to Kansas. They got ahead early, and the shots were falling. Kansas didn't really have a chance against them. Makai Luke, one of their players from overseas, only had 10 points. Devontae Graham had 23. Malik Newman had 21. Big performance there. Yeah, you scored 79 points. Half the time, that'll get you wins in college basketball. Not when the other team's dropping 95. And, you look at this. Spellman has a big game. Brunson, 18 points, 3 of 8 from 3, 7 of 14. Shot 50% from the floor. Dante DiVincenzo coming off the bench with 15 and 8 in this game. So, it wasn't necessarily like this one player dropped 30-something, dropped 40-something, and led this Villanova team to a win. That's what makes Villanova so deadly. Yeah, they have their stars. They've got Brunson. They've got Bridges. They've got, now, as we saw here recently, DiVincenzo and Spellman. But they don't have, they other than probably Bridges and Brunson, they didn't really have a star. Those were the phases of the team. But they proved you stop them, you still stop them, we're going to find ways to score. AKA, go back and look at Texas Tech. Jalen Brunson goes 0 of 8 from three-point land. They win by 12. It's such a good all-around team that really there's nothing that you could do to stop them in a way. And there's a reason why they were a number one seed in this tournament, which they took that momentum to the NCAA championship against Michigan and took out the Wolverines 79-62. As I just mentioned, Dante DiVincenzo playing well, 31 points and 5 boards against Michigan, off of the bench. So huge performance from him. He should be back next year, so he definitely earned his spot. He's almost like a Grayson Allen story to me. So when you look at this run Villanova they did something that's almost unprecedented once again. In every game they played in March this year, they won by double figures. So, insanity. Isaiah, what do you have to say about how dominant this Villanova team has been this year?
They just play team basketball. And when you look at dominant sporting teams in sports, let's just stick to basketball right now, but like the Golden State Warriors. Like you said, there's not just, if Steph has a bad game from three-point, you got KD, Clay, and Dre. If Dre doesn't have his best defensive game or Clay can't get the threes knocked down, you still have KD, you still have the other guys. So it's not just big outbursts by one player, and sometimes it happens. Like we saw with DiVincenzo in the championship. Sometimes big outbursts happen. But then look at UConn's basketball team. They might not have won the basketball championship this year for women's NCAA, but it's not usually just one player. I think the year what was that one girl's name she never lost a game at UConn?
Brianna
that Brianna girl. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the year that she was drafted into the WNBA, she had two other of the teammates in her starting lineup go in the first round with her. So you see just these really team-oriented teams that don't need that star player, and they might have a star player or two, but even if they have a bad game, they're not focused on just the stats. They're focused on the W's. And I think that's what the thing is with Villanova. They don't care. They know that if the wins come, the draft stock's going to rise. So you have to share the ball. You got to distribute.
I do know what you're saying, and almost I disagree. I feel like there's more teams that are trying to go for that superstar approach. But if you look in the grand scheme of things, it is the experienced, it is the well-rounded teams that are making it far in the tournament. You look and you see right now like I said, the Villanova Wildcats up there. You have the Kansas Jayhawks up there, who are not necessarily a way young team. by any means. If you look in the past, last year UNC took on Gonzaga with Justin Jackson, a junior in college. Joel Berry, who played his last season in the Carolina Blue this year. Luke May. Like, you have several. You have a superstar. That's fine and dandy. They probably sells tickets. I'm sure with Duke and Marvin Bagley, he sold them tickets this year. And if you look, Kentucky has made a product, made a formula of doing it every single year. But when you look at the bigger picture, who makes bigger runs in the tournament? It's more well-rounded. It's team-oriented. There aren't many teams in the NCAA here recently that have taken a superstar to the NCAA championship and won it all. And, I kind of went against my own thoughts there, and that's why I picked Michigan State this year. I thought Miles Bridges had what it takes. I thought that just Tom Izzo was going to find a way to get it done, and I was wrong. Syracuse, in their team-oriented fashion, went all the way to the Elite Eight. So, in the grand scheme of yes, if you dominate, DeAndre Ayton's draft stock was not hurt by playing for Arizona like he did. Marvin Bagley's was not hurt by playing for Duke. Things like that. Michael Porter Jr. was not the only thing that may have hurt his draft stock was his injury, but it wasn't because he was a one and done at Mizzou. It was Dante DiVincenzo might have more draft stock than he did before because of the big outburst he had in the NCAA tournament game. And you're not going to see a performance like that very often unless it's within a team like that. It's a guy you don't expect. It's a guy you're more focused on the two stars, and he comes in and he just lights the court on fire. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, take the team-oriented team. Don't try to push a star onto, and great players, it's a good thing to have. I'm not trying to say that a star player is a bad thing inherently, but you be wary of just stacking your team and putting all your faith in one guy, especially when it's going to be a one and done, because it's not going to be a very good outcome usually.
I think that's one thing that helps though with Villanova's play style of team-centered football or basketball. Because you have Brunson. He's a superstar player, the best player in basketball, arguably the best player in basketball this past year. And but if he's hanging around the three-point line, they're not going to leave him open. I mean, they're gonna find ways to shut him down. And we saw against Radford, against West Virginia, against pretty much everybody except Texas Tech. He was still hitting those incredibly contested shots on the outside. So you have to find ways. And, those players might not have an impact on the scoreboard, but they're still a distraction for the other team. And, I think that's one thing that helps. Like, you can still have stars within the well-rounded team, but it's not going to – you can't be a star like Russell Westbrook. It's like, I need the ball, I need to score, I need to get the assist. You can't have that kind of player in the team-centered basketball scheme,
We've already been talking a ton about Villanova this show, so let's talk about them some more. 2 championships in the past 3 years. Made an Elite Eight run, I believe, last year. So made it pretty far within the past 3 years. And as I stated before, they won every game they played this March by over 10 points, by double figures. So when you look at it, it begs the question, Jay Wright, coach of the Wildcats, is he the greatest basketball coach currently? I mean, he's losing Brunson, he's losing Bridges, but you have to look at just sheer success in the NBA in the past and, what might be in the future. So, as of right now, is Jay Wright the best college basketball coach in the country?
In my opinion, hands down, yes. Yeah, there's going to be the arguments with Calipari and Coach K and Tom Izzo, like guys like that. There's going to be those arguments there. And, obviously, they're warranted. They are warranted. But like we were just talking about one-and-dones, possibly like the one-and-done superstars hurting the team itself and the chances at a national title. And Jay Wright, like we were talking about, like a lot of their guys, not just him, like Syracuse coach, but Wright's had more success with it, obviously. But like he's able to convince the players to come back. Brunson was a big name last year. He may not have, his draft stock may not have been as high, but he would have been drafted last year. He was still a solid player. So he's able to convince them to come back year after year after year. And their stock's rising, so that's part of it. And their team dynamic coming back will only help their stock. But at the same time, like, he's able to do that. So it's the recruiting plus his relationship with the players to make them want to come back, and just the strategy of knowing who to utilize in what moments. Kind of like a Bill Belichick of college basketball in a way right now.
I do believe that he is up there, definitely. I mean, I can't think of anybody, especially right now, that I would put ahead of him, but I do have to tie him in with, I believe, two other coaches. Obviously, my coach Krzyzewski for Duke, Coach K, and Bill Self for Kansas. I mean, if you just take a look at what success these guys have had in the past. Coach K, 5 national championships, countless legends. Grant Hill, JJ Redick was a monster at Duke back in his prime. Just looking at Christian Laettner, and I mean, coming out this year, Seth Curry here recently. There are a lot of high-profile names coming out of that program, and so you can't really forget about what Coach K has done. And look, he did make it I said earlier, Syracuse made it to the Sweet 16. They made, or the Elite Eight. They made it to the Sweet 16. I apologize for that, but Duke made it all the way to the Elite Eight this year, so you can't really fault them for that. And Bill Self was the coach of the team that beat them in the Elite Eight. And you look at their program. Andrew Wiggins coming out of there, Joel Embiid. So looking at Mario Chalmers, just knowing that Bill Self has still had the success that he has. It's really they did all. He has NCAA championships as well. I do know that. I always find it funny. I think of Bill Self, and the first thing that comes to mind is he beat Steph Curry in the NCAA tournament. He was one of the team. He was the team that beat that Davidson team in the Elite Eight. Call that a best of the best situation they could have had, because they were still playing a 9-seeded Davidson in that tournament. But guess what? Steph Curry was insane that tournament, and he almost beat them, but they pulled it out at the end. So, and also at the same time, you're looking at Jay Wright. 2 out of 3 years, they've won the championship. You made the Elite, at least the Elite Eight 3 straight years. You had players like Jalen Brunson. You had players like Bridges, and you've had players in the past like Kyle Lowry, Randy Foye. So, if you wanted to look at what Duke had and what Kansas had, absolutely Jay Wright belongs with them. I mean, Duke just recently started falling under the one and done syndrome. Same thing with Kansas. So, but Villanova hasn't done that. Villanova hasn't fallen victim, really, to the whole one and done type thing. I mean, if you look at them the year they won it all, Ryan Arcidiacono stayed all 4 years. Chris Jenkins stayed all 4 years. So, they're heroes. They are true performers, and your true contributors. They're staying. Villanova is playing old school college basketball in the age of one and dones. And it starts with Jay Wright. And I really believe that that's a major reason, a major factor in their recent success. And if Jay Wright can continue to do that, well, you're providing continuity to your players. You're providing to them the commitment of, listen, we're not going to replace you with this guy that's going to come in and we're not getting you just for 1 year of success because we expect you to go to the NBA. No, we're getting you because we expect you to shine for Villanova for at least 4 years, or at least 2. Like, we expect you to make yourself known on a national stage and potentially do something later on, but not necessarily, cool, thanks for the year, nice Elite Eight run, but we're going to go with this guy right now. That, to me, isn't necessarily the sign of a great coach. But Jay Wright defies that, and I like that a lot about him.
I think it helps, too, though, that, I don't know, just when you look at Self, like we were talking about the great players he's had, looking at Coach K and Calipari, like the coaches they've had, you can kind of say, like, in a way, that Wright hasn't had as much talent. He hasn't had as much talent, but he's still, and yeah, he's not like won as many championships as either of those guys yet, but he's still Like we put him on the same level, and he's coached with less talent, and I think it's because the players trust him, so that it's easier to play on a high level when you play for a coach that you respect and you know wants you there in the starting lineup, that wants you to contribute. He's just a great coach, and yeah, he might be a good recruiter. Obviously, he has to get guys that fit his system and that he can win with. So yeah, he's a good recruiter, obviously, but he's he doesn't have those big names like we were talking about earlier. He doesn't have those star players, not the Bagleys, one of the top 5 ranked players in the whole nation. He doesn't have that perennially coming into his program, but he's still succeeding.
And I just went on my whole spiel about Jay Wright. I really believe, like I said, he's at the very, very, very least a top 3 coach in the NCAA right now. So Villanova will be looking to try to repeat. They haven't done that before. It'll be an interesting campaign for them because, like I said, they are losing Brunson and they are losing Bridges. So, can Villanova repeat? It's March. It's March Madness. You never know. And I could tell you. I mean, I could make a guarantee next year. Usually, I would that all one seeds would win, but I can't do that anymore. So I'm not going to make any sudden guesses or bets on anything about going on next March. But one thing I do want to talk about is our way too early top 5 teams in the nation. I don't really care about this being wrong because it doesn't matter. So, based off of what we know right now, who are going to be your top 5 teams to put in the rankings next season, at the beginning of next season?
I'll say in no particular order because I think they could go in. Actually, no, I'll give an order. The first team I want to say is Villanova. Just because, yeah, they're losing 2 star players, but we saw some young guys step up and make a huge impact in the tournament and the championship game. After that, I honestly want to put Duke just because, yeah, they're losing Bagley, they're using Grayson Allen. They always have a top recruiting class. I'm not going to buy into UK or UNC right now, but I would honestly put at number 3, I would put in UVA. Just because, yeah, they lost to UMBC, the first one seed to ever lose in the first round. But, I mean, wouldn't you be mad? Wouldn't you want that vengeance the next season? You're going to make sure you're not in that same position again. So, and they still have that great defense. Are they losing any big impact players? I don't think they are. So, pretty much the same core, the same roster. Number 4, I want to say... I really don't know where to go with that. I would put UK there just because I think they're expected to lose a lot of their guys. I know Calipari said that he expects his whole starting lineup to be drafted, but again, it's Calipari, great coach. And then Kansas. I know Kansas may be losing 1 or 2 guys, but again, we're just talking about great coach, has experience, and he always seems to get the best out of his players, whether it's one and done or not. Which do I expect any of them to make a deep run into playoffs next year into the tournament? I would say Villanova and honestly UVA because I think UVA is going to turn it around. But that's where I'm at right now with that.
So I'm actually going to go from back 5 to 1, honestly, with it. So to me, that is a tough question for me to ask because there are several great teams, obviously, there are just several great teams that have had great recruiting classes here recently that I could put up there. Although I disagree with you. I don't think Kentucky's gonna be that high. I really don't. I don't I still have never liked the idea of a team of all freshmen, and I think they shouldn't even be considered the favorites in the SEC, if I'm being completely honest. So I'm going to say that I believe my 5 is going to be, I would say Michigan State. Michigan State's losing Miles Bridges. So I'm going to say Virginia at number 5, I believe. Tony Bennett, defensive coach, coach of the year. They turn around with the Retrievers. And again, they could make a run. But I think at the beginning of the season, they start the rankings at possibly number 5. At least with me, they go number 5. At number 4, I'm going to put, honestly, See, that's a number 4. I'll put Kansas right there. Mekhi Luke will probably be back. We don't know about Malik Newman, and Malik Newman's a star. We saw in the NCAA tournament. If they can get him back, then that could be trouble for everybody else in the Big 12 and in the NCAA. At number 3, I'm going to say, honestly, Villanova right there. You have your team oriented. I just went on a rant about how good they were. Losing Jalen Bridges, excuse me, using Jalen Brunson is such a big deal. A player of that caliber, losing a player of that caliber in any sort of way hurts you in so many different ways that it's ridiculously hard to overcome in a way. And number 2, I'm honestly going to lean towards, if they can find a way to get this is called, you may make this a bold statement, but they've really impressed me. Michigan played well. If they don't lose anybody, if no one goes to the into the NBA draft, Michigan can make a run Michigan can make another run next year. They're very capable of doing that. Mo Wagner playing very well in this tournament. So Michigan put me all the way up there too. I know. You could say, and you know what? I'll just go ahead and do this right now. Michigan 3, Villanova 2. Make that a little bit right. Number 1's Duke. Because to me, let me read you something. R.J. Barrett, Cam Reddish, Zion Williamson. 1, 3, and 2 recruit in the nations, respectively, all going to Duke. Then you go a little bit down the road. You may remember a guy that played for Duke a few years ago, won a national championship with him, named Tyus Jones. His younger brother, who's supposed to be better than him, Trey Jones, at number 12 in the country, is a Duke Blue Devil. I mean, the sheer talent, and this isn't about who's going to make a run in the NCAA tournament. We have no idea how well these guys are going to play with how well these guys are going to play with each other. But at the end of the day, the sheer potential and the sheer talent level that this team possesses and this team will possess, to me, they're undoubtedly the number 1 team in the nation at that point. Because you got to think about, what's the best case? How good could this team be, especially at the beginning of the season? And Duke's got that it factor. Duke's got the image. Zion is a phenomenon around United States right now. And to me, there really isn't a contest for the number 1 team in the nation. And it's got to be Duke at the beginning of the season. Moving on to professional basketball. The National Basketball Association. The Wild Wild West. Once again, the Eastern Conference is all but settled, really. Why is the Western Conference is still in full swing with only 3 teams that have clinched a playoff spot with 4 games to go. You heard me correctly. 4 games to go and only 3 teams have clinched a playoff spot. What is happening in the NBA? Well, I'll tell you what's happening. The Western Conference is ridiculously good. So that begs the question right now. Can the Denver Nuggets, right now, they are half a game back of the 8th seed, 1.5 games back of the 5th seed, and 1 game up on the Clippers, who are in the 10th seed. Can they find a way to sneak into the playoffs? Isaiah, do you what? Give me your answer to that. Does Denver make the playoffs? And if they do, who do they knock out who is currently in? If they do make the playoffs.
I think they do make the playoffs. I'm just going to put that out there. Half a game back from New Orleans. Jimmy Butler, if I understand correctly, is actually almost ready to come back from injury. But I think Anthony Davis may be getting tired. Of course, he's still dominating. But when you're carrying a team, it was over half a season since Boogie got hurt. And yeah, they were expected to crash then, but he's been dominating. He's been, obviously James Harden's an MVP pick, but Anthony Davis any other year would be an MVP favorite. He's just a monster, but I think he's getting tired of carrying a team because he's playing some 4, playing some 5. He's doing everything. He can take the ball to court. He's an all-around player. I mean, he would be like the LeBron if LeBron wasn't there, wasn't in the league. So I honestly think that Anthony Davis is just tired. It's a long season. He's been doing everything for 50 games. So I think that Denver's going to leap over New Orleans and take that 8th spot, especially with Jimmy Butler coming back. And with 2 matchups between the Timberwolves and the Nuggets left. in the remaining 4 or 5 games, it's gonna be difficult for the Nuggets. But I can honestly see, especially with Butler coming back, the T-Wolves maintaining that spot at the 7th seed, and New Orleans falling out and letting Denver take the 8.
I gotta say yes, more so obviously for wishful thinking than anything. But also looking at the schedule they have left. You want to look at it right now. The Nuggets play tomorrow against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Then they go, and it's that game is at home. They go to Los Angeles to take on the Clippers. They have the Portland Trail Blazers at home, and then they travel to Minnesota once again. Regardless of what happens, if they win out, no matter what any NBA team does, they make the playoffs. Do I expect them to win out? No. The team I expect them to knock out, though, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Because, and now, that it is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves if Jimmy Butler is either not playing or is still a little rusty. Because, to me, also, both teams are going to be playing with a fire. But you want to look at momentum-wise. Denver's got all the momentum right now. They've won 3 straight. Minnesota, not so much. With Jimmy Butler just coming back, you'll have a rusty. He'll be a little bit rusty. He won't necessarily be the mid-season Jimmy Butler, the all-star Jimmy Butler that we saw earlier in the season. So to me, it's going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves. And your answer already, renders this next question pointless for me, for you, anyways. Will the New Orleans Pelicans miss the playoffs? And you just said you think they will. To me, I don't think they do. I think that Minnesota misses the playoffs, and I think I believe that the Pelicans leap the Timberwolves in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I mean, like I already compared AD to LeBron in a way, saying he's like a LeBron but not LeBron. He's not on LeBron's level, obviously. But the last player that has had like such high expectations while being the one to carry their team. Obviously, LeBron did it for whole seasons. He was in Cleveland before, but I mean, LeBron and AD were the only two in like recent memory. Of course, Harden's done it with the Rockets before CP3 was there, but he still had Ariza, Capella, but he had some solid support players. And yeah, there's an older Rajon Rondo playing point, like Drew Holiday. Yeah, there's some help for AD, but not much at all. So it kind of reminds me of the old Cavs with LeBron in his first stint with them. But LeBron played for a weaker Eastern Conference. I mean, I don't know if there's ever been a conference so competitive as it is now, with the 10th seed still being almost 10 games above 500. It's just so competitive, and yeah, I mean, LeBron's done it before, but in a weaker, his conference was so much weaker. It wasn't a conference with 2 of possibly the best teams of all time at the top, with some solid guys that would be the number 1 seed in the East, following up with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th seeds in the West.
So you were talking about the Eastern Conference. You were talking about LeBron, and we all know playoff LeBron is just one of the best performers of all time. That begs the question right now: who are favorites in the Eastern Conference? The Celtics have had injury issues here recently, and there have been several teams playing pretty good basketball in the Eastern Conference. So I'm going to start with you. Who is your favorite to represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals?
I know last week I said Toronto, but honestly right now the way I'm feeling is that if Kyrie is not back and healthy, like 100% healthy, I'm actually leaning toward the 76ers, which would be crazy going from worst to first. But I could honestly see that just because Embiid can shoot. I mean, he can dominate the glass. I mean, all we know, he's a good player, a good all-around player. Ben Simmons, he's been a triple-double machine this year. I think he's broken the rookie record for triple-doubles, or tied Magic Johnson's record. He's been all around. Markelle Fultz is back, and he's not playing bad. He's playing pretty solid for the trouble he's had with the shooting mechanics. I mean, they're just an all-around solid team. So I've got to go 76ers right now. And they're young. So if this isn't the year, it's in the future soon. And then just throw this out there as well. The Eagles won a Super Bowl. Villanova won a championship. It's Philadelphia season.
I like what the correlation you just did there, but I have a hole in your story. Did the Philadelphia Phillies win a World Series this year? No, they're not going to win the World Series. So you're saying Philadelphia? It's Philadelphia's year. I really don't think the Philadelphia. I don't think that the Phillies will make it anymore for a close. And I agree with you. I think Philadelphia, the Sixers, are a very underrated team. Ben Simmons is ridiculous. He's proven to us that he was worth the wait. Joel Embiid is still a great player. Markel Fultz has had a few highlights, pretty good games since he came back. A lot of people thought he was going to be not good at all with his. He had to completely relearn his shot. He had to relearn muscle memory. So for him to come out and play as well as he has here recently, that's a very good step in the right direction for the Sixers team. However, I'm going to go with the team you said before. I'm going to go with the Raptors. DeMar DeRozan, to me, is almost an MVP candidate this year. Kyle Lowry still been playing out of his mind. Jonas Valanciunas, still a very reliable big man. And when you look at it, it's the butt of every joke towards the end that Kyle Lowry does not perform in the postseason. With the number one team in the Eastern Conference, he might make that extra step. He may get over that hump, and it looks closer and closer that Toronto's going to clinch that number one seed. So give me the Raptors. I know it's the cop out. It's taking the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, but to me, Toronto's proven that they deserve the number one seed, and especially with with a Kyrie that's not back 100%. Give me the Raptors, and I still got to give my honorable mention to Cleveland. Playoff LeBron is still insane, but my gut tells me to go with Toronto in this pick. So, we're getting to the end of the year. There's 4 games. Some teams have 5 games left. Some teams have 4. One of the most anticipated awards that you got to think about is Rookie of the Year. And I feel like this is a good time to talk about that with very few games left. Who, in your opinion, as a rookie, has done enough to take home the hardware this year?
Well, I'm just going to start with this. Dennis Smith has a pretty good year for being on a bad team. I love Ben Simmons. Like I was just saying, I love Ben Simmons, all-around player. He's one of the future faces of the NBA. Him and Giannis, I believe, are. And I've even argued with people about why Simmons should be in the conversation to have it. Because there's the whole, it's the second year, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's that conversation. I will say, honestly, though, I think Donovan Mitchell's earned it. He's playing for a Utah team that we don't know where they'd be without him. Because they have him. So we don't know where they'd be with that same team without him, especially not having Gordon Hayward. But we've seen just how well the team plays when he's on the court. He was in the dunk contest, obviously he's that. But he can shoot. He's just an all-around player. He's his stats, his all-around stats, like when it comes to boards, assists, steals, might not be as flashy as Ben Simmons. But I think, in my opinion, and his game may not be as complete as Simmons, but he's better in certain areas. And I think, especially when you have guys like Joel Embiid and now Markel Fultz on the Sixers, I still think that Donovan Mitchell is more valuable to his team right now than Simmons and Dennis Smith and the other rookies, Bogdanovich, guys like that. Like I really think Donovan Mitchell is just more important. He's more valuable, so I would give it to him.
The only type of fan that's heard more about Donovan Mitchell than my team this year is Utah, because the Nuggets traded him away in a draft last year to get Trey Lyles. Still not a trade, surprisingly, that I regret by any means. I mean, people wanted to say the same thing when we traded Yusuf Nurkic for Mason Plumlee in a pick. Like, if you look at the bigger picture, Donovan Mitchell would have been fighting for playing time with the Nuggets. He wouldn't have had a chance to really shine and play like he has for Utah. And to me, that's what makes him the candidate for Rookie of the Year. He got the perfect situation, and he flourished. You look at this team. Yeah, you have Ricky Rubio. You have Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is a very good big man. You have a pretty decent power forward in Derek Favors. You have Joe Ingles as your starting small forward. You have Alec Burks coming off the bench. No longer Rodney Hood. or excuse me, Joe Ingles is not the starter anymore. Jake Crowder is the starter. But that team, to me, is not the 4 seed in the Western Conference without Donovan Mitchell. Ben Simmons, yes, he adds a lot to the team. Donovan Mitchell can literally do almost anything on the basketball court. He can shoot the three. He's athletic enough to where he can finish inside, finish through contact, plays pretty good defense. Ben Simmons is a liability from shooting outside. He's ridiculously athletic. And that's a shot, that's a skill you could pick up later on in your career. But Donovan Mitchell has it now. And he's been proving all year long that he has it now. He's had his clutch moments. He's had his big games. And to me, it's Donovan Mitchell. I think Ben Simmons deserves consideration, but Donovan Mitchell needs to take home the hardware. Especially, like I said, if he can finish that, if he can get that Utah Jazz team up to the 4 seed and finish there, a very impressive accomplishment. Considering at the All-Star break, Jazz weren't even in the playoffs. In fact, a lot of people didn't even consider them in playoff talks at all. And they go on, and I believe it was about 14 straight that they won. It was a huge streak that they went on. And you look at them now, and Donovan Mitchell was a huge factor in that.
And that's considering how good the West is, and that Greg Popovich coach team was when Utah was climbing up the ranks. Pop Spurs are falling out of the ranks for a little while, and then you have an MVP, a guy that's an MVP candidate, Anthony Davis, still in the line at the 8th seed. I mean, it's just, Simmons is playing in an Eastern Conference, and they're the 5th seed, I believe. So he's doing very well. I think he's the reason that the Sixers are at the 5th seed. But it's still, they'd still be in playoffs, I believe, without him because the Eastern Conference is wide open, or was wide open. It's not as hard, but the Western Conference is wide open in a sense that everyone is so good. So that's why I think they'd be like the 12th seed if they didn't have Donovan Mitchell.
Some good basketball going on Tuesday night. The Toronto Raptors traveled to Cleveland. A lot of basketball, too. Toronto Raptors lost to the Cavaliers 112-116. The Philadelphia 76ers took out the Brooklyn Nets 121-95 on their home floor. Atlanta went to Miami, and Miami clinched a playoff spot as they beat the Hawks 101-98. The Orlando Magic traveled to the Big Apple, took on the New York Knicks, dominated the Knicks 97-73. Charlotte Hornets taking on and going to Chicago and losing 114-120. But the highlight of the game was Malik Monk's double clutch dunk from the corner. It was insanity, very athletic play. The Washington Wizards lost, like a lot of teams have this year, in Houston, 120-104. The Boston Celtics got taken out by the Milwaukee Bucks, 106-102. Golden State, the Warriors, taking on Oklahoma City in Kevin Durant's least favorite place now in Oklahoma City, but they won 111-107. The Indiana Pacers traveled to the Mile High City to take on the Denver Nuggets and lost 107-104. The Portland Trail Blazers went to Dallas and lost also. Dennis Smith Jr. playing well in this game, 109-115. The Lakers taking on the Jazz in Utah. Jazz won this game. Jazz won this matchup 117-110. The Sacramento Kings taking on the Phoenix Suns in Phoenix in the Who Cares game, the irrelevant bowl of the night, 97-94. The Suns took on the win. And another game kind of important in playoff standings, the San Antonio Spurs taking on the Los Angeles Clippers. Clippers won the game 113-110 in the Staples Center. So our hypothetical for the day, taking in the fact that everybody is healthy, every single person in the NBA is healthy, who is your best center in the NBA right now?
For me, it's Boogie Cousins. Just because, we've seen him before. Prior to injury, he was dominating the glass. He was, dominating the glass. He had a couple 20-plus rebound games, and he was shooting pretty good from outside. He was shooting inside. It was just another dimension. Like, him and AD playing together were crazy. But even before he was in New Orleans and he was in Sacramento, he's just an outstanding center. So I have to give it to him. You have guys like Drummond, but he can't shoot nearly as well. I think, in my opinion, just as good on the boards, but can't shoot nearly as well. So I got to give the edge to Boogie.
I do have to agree with you. I do think that Boogie Cousins is at the very least top two. The other center I'm going to touch on just because and again, like I said, I agree with you, but I kind of want to touch on him is Karl Anthony Towns, Cat, for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's the definition of a stretch big. He can go out, he can shoot the three ball, he can bang in the post, he can outwork you in so many different ways. His defense sometimes is a liability, but that's always something that can be improved later on. And for me, I really believe that Karl Anthony Towns does enough on the offensive side of the ball to get his name up there and get up there in potentially a top three conversation. So my answer for that obviously is Boogie Cousins, but I also think that Karl Anthony Towns is on his way. The playoff standings in the Eastern Conference. The Toronto Raptors still holding strong in the 1 seed. The Boston Celtics taking the number 2 seed right now. The Cleveland Cavaliers have taken have taken the 3 seed right now. And correction from earlier, Philadelphia is in the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. At number 5 is the Indiana Pacers. At number 6 is the Miami Heat. And finally, at number 7 is the Washington Wizards. All of those teams have clinched playoff spots, except for the number 8 seed, the Milwaukee Bucks. However, they only need to win, I'm pretty sure, one more game, and they clinch the playoff spot. So that's why, Eastern Conference is all but set, essentially. A lot has to happen for Detroit to make their way in the playoffs over Milwaukee, and Milwaukee's the only team they can knock out at this point, but a lot has to happen. And then we go to the Western Conference. The Houston Rockets have already clinched the Western Conference, and they've clinched the number 1 seed. Golden State's already clinched the number 2 seed. Portland, as number 3 seed, has clinched a playoff spot. Those are the only three teams with playoff spots clinched in the Western Conference. Following the Trailblazers is the Utah Jazz, number 4. The San Antonio Spurs are at number 5. The Oklahoma City Thunder at number 6. The Minnesota Timberwolves at number 7. The New Orleans Pelicans at number 8. And finally, the two teams looking in, the Clippers are at number 10. They're a game and a half out of the 8 seed. And the Denver Nuggets are at 9 with a half game out of the 8 seed. Moving on to America's pastime, Major League Baseball. And a hot topic this week and all offseason, Giancarlo Stanton, superstar for the Miami Marlins, getting traded going to the New York Yankees and making his debuts in this season. And let me tell you, they haven't necessarily been pretty looking at their stats. However, I do have some news to report about it. Looking at his stats before today's game, they are playing a game currently against the Tampa Bay Rays. Before this game, he was 4 of 19 with 9 strikeouts and 1 home run. Surprisingly, 2 home runs. And, if you look at the grand scheme of things, if you want to be this superstar player like he has been, you cannot strike out as much as he has. You cannot, in his first home game as a New York Yankee, he goes and he gets what's called as the platinum sombrero. It's insane for someone to strike out more than 3 times, and he did it 5 times in one game. 0 of 5 for 5 Ks. That is very, very bad. And if you look at his game today, he's 1 for 2 right now, a home run and a strikeout. Can't get much more inconsistent than that. Giancarlo Stanton, he has plenty of time to turn around. We're this early in the season. He's played 5 games for the Yankees, or he's in the middle of the 5th game, I believe. So to look at this as a hit the emergency brake, cut him out right now, no. There's 162 games in a baseball season for a reason. Giancarlo Stanton's gonna be fine. But it is worth noting that he was booed in Yankee Stadium in his 0 for 5 5K performance. And then we're going out west. Shohei Ohtani, who a lot of people are calling the next Babe Ruth, pitcher and designated hitter for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. In his first at-bat in Angel Stadium, goes yard, and it was very convincingly. So it was great because it was one of those shots that it didn't really go over the wall with him, but you knew it was gone the minute it left the bat. The sound it made and it's such a special moment. They gave him the silent treatment as he comes in. No one's really congratulating him. They delay. He goes around. He's pretending to give 5s to everybody. Then everyone mobs him. It's a great scene to watch. He got his first win as a pitcher in his first career start. So things are looking up for him, and it should be very exciting to see what he can do in Anaheim. Well, that's going to do it here on Hot Takes with Holmes from Radio Free Radford. If you like what you heard, be sure to tune in next week, right here at 3 p.m. once again on radiofreeradford.wixsite.com. And be sure to like our Facebook page. We're also on YouTube. All of our broadcasts get uploaded to that channel. I'm going to try to get it uploaded tonight. So find us at Hot Takes with Holmes on both of the sites. Once again, tune in again next week, 3 p.m. As always, it'll be me and my co-host Isaiah Addair talking to you about probably NBA basketball and Major League Baseball. So for my co-host Isaiah Addair, I'm Blake Holmes, and we'll be back next week right here on Radio Free Radford.